What's up, guys? David DeSell here, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast, as always, joined with my co-host Landon. And although we recorded this on a Friday afternoon, getting into his boat time, I think you'll agree that this was time well spent with our new friend Bill.
Yeah, definitely is. I mean, I think it's safe to say that guy's just an absolute badass for
An
sure.
animal. You
Yeah,
go to his
you know,
website, you'll see he most certainly practices what he preaches.
yeah, we're both I think on the younger end of the spectrum than Bill, and Bill makes us look like child's play because he's just shredded,
Shredded.
absolutely yoked.
For context, first of all, a thank you to one of our previous guests and friends, Terry Shanahan. Terry is the one who brought Bill Esch and us together. And Bill's a kettlebell sport world champion, first American to receive the Sergi Mission Award, first American male to achieve Master of Sport international class ranking in kettlebell, and a five-time U.S. record holder for the long cycle. He's been in the fitness industry for 30 years, and you can just hear his passion in what he does. And we brought him on because he's entrepreneurial in his own right. He's had and sold a business, and he operates as a business owner in his day to day. But he does a lot of work with entrepreneurial folks, and he happens to. I know a lot of our listeners currently and our guests have been in Nebraska. He's located right in Omaha, so definitely keep your ears open for this one because I think this may be the little kick in the butt you may need.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, let's be honest, right? If you're going to be an elite performer at any level as business owner or not, the physical, mental, I mean, you gotta be clicking on all cylinders to be running at your optimum level. So um I know he personally, he obviously is not going to disclose openly, but he works with a number of individuals that are very high performers in the business world for sure.
Yeah, and I do want to give a quick shout out. So, Landon, I haven't even told you this yet, but I was chatting with our boy Dan Allison, and he had shared his niece's boyfriend, Alex Rocco, is an avid listener to the show. And this is just really cool. I'm going to tell you the story
All
now,
right.
on the spot. So, a lot of the folks, at least that we know, right, that are listening to the podcast, they, they'll text us and be like, "Hey, I love the show." Like we know kind of who's listening, but believe it or not, we've gotten to almost 8,000 downloads so far in, launching this since the beginning of the year, which isn't massive. It isn't small, but it's certainly expanded beyond our personal circle. So it's like, who the hell's listening to this, right? You wonder.
Yep.
So Dan's talking to this kid, he's in his early 20s, talking to this kid over dinner at his house, and it just came up like, "Oh, like what podcast are you listening to?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the show or this podcast, Business with the Boys." And so Dan's playing dumb, right? He's like, "Oh, Business with the Boys," and he's like bussing with the boys, like, is that? And he's like, "No, no, it's Business with the Boys, with David DeSell and Landon." And he's like, "Oh, cool." Like, he's like, "What do you like about it?" He's like, "Well, there's shows that it's either nobody's on there talking about nonsense, or they're just so far out of reach that it's tough to relate to. But like, they have real people on, they have successful people on, but they're real and we can relate to them. So yeah, I really liked it." And he says, "Well, what's been your favorite episode?" And he said, "Honestly, it's the episode that David interviewed Landon and learned about his story." And Dan at this point is just like geeking out. So he's like, "Yeah, I actually just got off a call with David." And he's like, "You talked to David?" And he's like, so imagine Dan's like, "Yeah, I know those two freaking knuckleheads."
Yeah.
So
I was
and
guest number one on the show.
yeah, exactly. So, with that in mind, I think it's cool to start to find out serendipitously like who else is listening to the show. So Alex Rocco, we appreciate your time and attention. And if
Shout out, brother. Appreciate you.
yeah, thank you. And if you can, not if you can, do this, please. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. It's just at David_DeCell. And say hello. Send me your address. Send me your t-shirt size. Let's toss you a t-shirt for your loyalty. So thank you. But yeah, Landon,
Damn
that's the
right.
first time I told you
You
that.
can
I
shoot
wanted
me
to
a
tell you on the
message
spot.
too in the follow. David probably knows. I don't know what I am on Instagram, but I'm assuming if you search Landon Troyer, it will come up. So I'm not the tech savvy one of the bunch here.
Oh man. And I asked you, I was like, oh, strategically, Landon, wearing the Landjet shirt today. And you're
Like
like,
that.
honestly? You're like,
I
honestly,
wear it all the
no, I
time.
just wear it all the time.
I've got them in like every color. So yeah, and it's comfy as hell. So yeah. Shout out Landjet.
Yeah, if we appreciate your sponsorship and your support. And for those of you who didn't catch the last episode, Landjet, specifically the folks that we know are in Omaha, but they're throughout the country as a brand and a service. And it's those, modded out Mercedes Sprinter vans that it's a mix between, a rolling office to a client event transporter, if you will, go to sporting events. And I would ask yourself, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, is your time to and from meetings better served with you driving or someone else driving so you can be productive in the back, hold meetings in the back, things like that? So highly encourage you to check
My
out
wife would also
Landjet.
tell you that if you want to have a great ladies' day and do a little bar and boutique hopping, this is also
Ooh,
they've done that. Landjeff is a great option for that as well. So yeah, boys trips, golf trips, girls' days, you
office
name it.
trips, meetings,
Yeah,
all that fun stuff.
hit them up for all of it.
Yeah, and you can just reach out to Omaha at landjet.com and you just mention business with the boys, BWTB. You can just mention David or Landon, whatever's easiest for you. You get 10% off based on our affiliation with them. So check them out. But with that said, let's go get fired up and inspired by Bill Esch and check out his website. Because again, you'll see the videos, you'll see the pictures, absolutely yoked, shredded, practices what he preaches. And if you scroll far enough, you'll see a cool photo of our boy Terry Shanahan as well. So dig deep and go check him out. But with that said, let's dive into the episode. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back. Well, Bill, welcome to the show. I know we were introduced by Terry, and you've had a wild sort of story from inception to now, but it rhymes along the way, so to speak, right? In a similar-ish industry under a similar umbrella. I guess give us some backstory of how you got started doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I started really young. Like I was 12 when I first started working in a gym, and it came about because
no labor laws back then, or you just say
apparently not. Because essentially what happened is my dad, his insurance. Well, I was playing football, and my dad's like, "You should strength train," and I was like, "Great, let's do it." And his insurance guy knew a guy, right? Like, and so this guy had this like boutique gym, and this his name was Doug Anders, and he had the Cybotic Health Technology is what he called it. And Doug worked with like people that had like bad knees, bad backs, hips, shoulders, things like that. But he had also qualified for the '84 Olympics in Olympic weightlifting. And so this would have been 92, 93-ish in that range when I went over there. So I was like 12, 13. And, so I forget what he did, like this flat fee at the gym. And it was probably $300 a person because it was all personalized training. And so to pay for that, I cleaned the place. And so
grinding
and I
from an early age. I like it.
Yeah. And so like I learned to like Olympic lift. And then, you know, after a couple months, I was pretty outgoing and personable as a kid. And so he like would just start having me like kind of spot people and help out and occasionally open the, you know, like this is probably after I was cleaning that, you know, I'd be hanging around kind of doing a little bit of that stuff. And then by the time I was like 15, 16, probably by the time I could drive, then I was starting to like open the gym and do things and work, like really work with clients and introduce them to what it is that we did there. And what was really cool, so that Doug had done was he had made this machine at the time. It was called the Free Spot. And the inception of this was that it had basically, but in the, I think it was Pan Am Games, he missed a snatch in Olympic weightlifting and he dropped a bar on C7 and it fractured it. Okay.
Oh.
And so while he was in rehab, he's like, well, how can I lift weights and do it in a safe way? And so he created this machine called the Free Spot. And you have to understand, this is like 80s. Okay. So this machine it had a squat rack and then there was a big engine behind it. Okay. Where 2 Kevlar ropes wrapped like over and down through kind of piping and into the bar. So it was attached to the bar. And then across the bar was a laser beam. So once you broke the bar, the beam on the bar, it was free moving. The second you let go, it hang. The second you stop moving, it would start assisting you. And you would have like a code that you'd put in. So the bar is completely free moving, right? It could read power outputs, so how fast you move the bar, and you could set ranges of motion for people. So this guy is like light years.
Where is this today? I feel like
no shit. That's
okay. So this story gets this is a classic fitness industry guru story. Doug's in jail.
What?
Yes. Okay. So this is what gets so crazy is so everyone in Omaha came to Doug. So like, you know, we had the head of Kiewit construction at the time. We had
UP, ConAgra. I mean, all the
execs, all of it.
Right?
Just go through the list. Plus, I mean,
all of them are headquartered in Omaha at the time. Like you're gonna get
so all those C-suites were in there.
Berkshire players, all of them.
Everything, right? Exactly. And so he's brilliant, but he's not right. He's super manipulative. He's super. I mean, it's there's this great book called the Great Ohm, and it's by something Bernard, or it's about this. It's like Bernard Shaw or something like that. Anyways, he's the first American yogi, and the amount of scandal that comes with him. And he was with like the Vanderbilts and all these people, and it was crazy because he could do these things. He understood things about the human body that most people just don't. But it's actually just how the body works. And people just don't know how to access it. But if you have that knowledge, sometimes it can seem really impressive. The other thing with like personal training and being in this industry or yoga is when people come to a personal trainer or a fitness place is they are looking for help and they are asking for help. So it automatically, they are opening themselves to you. And you have to be super, super respectful of that. And you can't abuse that.
And they're probably not at a real high self-esteem place.
No.
They're looking for help at that point, right? It's like checking to rehab. You don't check into rehab on a winning streak, right?
No, 100%. And the thing is that most people, when they walk into a gym, they feel like the first time I got audited by the IRS. Like my payroll got audited and they're asking me all these questions. And I had like paychecks as a company doing my payroll. And I remember sitting there and being like, I'm like sweating bullets and I had nothing to worry about. But that's how most people feel when they walk into a gym. Cause they're like, well, I should be able to do this. I got a body and I can pick things up and put it down. But, then you see all these other people are super fit and you're like, well, what is going on? You feel like you feel stupid, essentially. Like there's that
intimidated. Yeah.
You don't belong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so so Doug is off the charts genius, but he went to jail for statutory rape. I mean, he had there was I wasn't there at the time. It was years later after I had left. And I mean, like 15, 20 years later. But when I heard it, I was like, no, it doesn't surprise me.
On brand. Yeah.
Yeah. But what he had created was he was so far ahead of his time. So we had docs like, pain specialists and back surgeons sending us people that they thought would be good candidates. And you'd see all these people like do really well. We had like Jack Stark who was the team psychologist for Nebraska, and Hendricks Motorsports. And so the Hendricks Motorsports, the guys.
I forgot he was the Hendricks Motorsports guy too. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And the Hendricks Motorsports group came into us. And there's a laundry list of people that would come in there. And so that was like my first 10 years of fitness was doing that. And then I graduated college. I still work there in Lincoln. I played football down in Lincoln for like 2 years. And ended up going to the Jewish Community Center as an assistant athletic director over there for like a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And one of the great things about what Doug had done was that his gym, everybody that came in got trained. And so there's about 100. I wanted to create a gym where there's about 150 people. 150 people is about the size of a battalion. It is basically there's only 1 degree of separation between everybody. So it creates this huge stick factor. And I wanted to run a gym where everybody got trained. They came in, paid a flat fee, and you could show up whenever you wanted between, operational hours, which was like 5 to 9 at night. And so I went to a guy here in town, my partner at the time, or who soon became my partner, was Todd Smith, and I told him what I wanted to do. And I went, we worked on it for about 2 years, and he had a private studio, which I worked out of for that time. And then we opened up Smith and Esch, and I ran that for 10 years. Ended up buying my partner out after about a year and a half into it. And then I ended up selling that out and going to Lifetime Fitness. And that's where I'm at now. And I've been there for 7 years.
So going back a little bit, and I'm glad, without using this exact phrase, I know we talked about it before, but I want to dig deeper momentarily in the Dunbar principle that you alluded to.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of it.
I got you. I take good notes from our first conversation. But you're going down this path of personal training to then owning the gym. And what's your role at Lifetime Fitness currently?
Currently, I'm just a trainer. When I came in, I was in charge. I was a manager and in charge of all education for staff. When COVID hit, they exited all management out, and then Lifetime's awesome. I love Lifetime.
Well, it's bougie. So I love the bouginess of Lifetime.
I call it Globo Gym.
It's super bougie. But when they came back, they started basically they had kind of implemented some things like, basically, if you want a position back, you're going to have to hit X, Y, and Z numbers. And that was going to require me to put in a lot more hours and basically rebuild stuff that I actually technically, because on everything I had signed, I was just a trainer again. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to go back to managing just my own business. And it's great. I have, ton of great clients. It's so low stress.
You run it how you want to. Yep.
Yeah. And going from, I don't know David, if this is where you were going with it, going from owning your own place, right, to then being like a corporate manager, like they're two kind of different beasts, but like owning your own place is so infinitely time consuming and stressful. And the thing was, is I was 26 when I started it. And so I wasn't equipped. I mean, to be honest, like I was not equipped to understand the structures of what I needed to put in place to make this place repeatable and to make it a job. Well, not to make it a job, to make it a business that works for me and not me working for the business. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I was always working for that business. And so when I had the opportunity to get bought out by them, that's what I took, because, you know, at a certain point, so off in my gym, I had 5 other gyms form in that 10 years. So about every 2 years, someone would get up. And so it's just about the time I felt like, oh, I can step off and have this guy start moving it. Then, you know, that guy'd take over, and then I'd have to come back in and be around. And it just kind of became this vicious cycle. During that time, I got married, I had 2 kids. Like I wanted to be able to see them. And so that was kind of how I ended up making that decision, move to Lifetime.
Well, it's cool. So one of the things that we try to do with the podcast is bring on different entrepreneurial style people that go down different paths, to basically communicate with the folks tuning in that there's no, this is the path or that is the path. Like you can take it in whatever direction that you head, because although you may, as you put it, which I'm going to try to reword eventually, which you said, I'm just a trainer at Lifetime now, using the word just. The reality is you're still essentially running your own business, your book of business, but within an organization where they have badass equipment that you don't have to pay for. They have great facilities. They have foot traffic, frankly, to be able to help grow your business. So it's the same thing in a different model with less risk and less overhead. So I view it as the same thing that you were doing before personally, but just in a different setup.
Yeah, you de-risked your situation a little bit.
A lot.
Yeah,
a lot.
Take some chips off the table, cash some money in, put a little money in the bank, and then I still control my own destiny. Nothing wrong with that.
And it's fantastic, because
should be every business owner's goal, in all honesty.
I mean, they let me do. I mean, listen, I train anywhere from 40 to 50 sessions. Me run my business as I see fit, and going back to the foot traffic thing, like that's. I mean, Dave, that's 100%. You know, I know I talk to a lot of trainers that are like, I'm going to go start my own place. And I'm all for it. Like, that's awesome. Like everybody needs to go down a path of which they need to find out and figure it out. Right. They need that. But sometimes they don't take into account what is being provided to them. The foot traffic at Lifetime is 4,000 card swipes a day in Omaha.
No shit.
That's a lot.
Okay. The membership base is 8,600 memberships, of which it's 2.6 people per membership. So you're looking at 16,000 people, right, that belong to one facility. And so, like, as a trainer, it's awesome. I mean, like, and it's the bougiest place in town. And you're parked right in the wealthiest part of town.
Well, you're going where there's a Planet Fitness clientele, right? And there's a Lifetime clientele.
Right. 100%. And so it's ideal, right? But you have to have all those business practices and understanding. And
well, sometimes you just need to go get your teeth kicked in, owning your own shop to appreciate what the other side is like, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, 100%, you know. And so it's fascinating. And like Lifetime it's the only place because like that I've seen or have worked at where they actually asset manage. I mean, in the 7 years that I've been there, now they've totally redone the entire main floor, but every piece of it, and I mean every piece of equipment is new. They've put in pickleball courts. All the TVs are new. They've re-wallpapered the place. Like, so when the wallpaper is depreciated, they put the same wallpaper up, but they put up new wallpaper. When the paint is off, they paint it. They've resurfaced the pool 2 or 3 times. They stay on top of, they understand that they're renting space and they want to do that at a high level. And then underneath that, they have how many businesses? They have a cafe, they have a childcare center, they have, the pool. I'll put that in its own category. They have a medi spa and just regular like spa with haircuts and massages. They have the personal training staff.
You can spend all day there.
Well, yeah, I mean,
you never have to leave. Yeah,
yeah, and it's
I would if they
pretty
would charge so
amazing
damn much for a guest pass to play pickleball, Bill. If you can put in a good word for me on that side of things.
Well,
put in these new courts. Everybody's like, "Oh, you've been to
I'll
Lifetime Sports." I'm like, "No, they want like $50 for me to drop in when I go do it for $6 elsewhere. Get bent, Lifetime."
Speaking of that, of staying on top of it, they just redid their courts right now. They're currently redoing, and they've only had those courts for
less than a year, 2 years.
Yeah, something like that.
It hasn't been long.
That's the most impressive thing to me in watching, because like at least in Omaha, Nebraska, there was Prairie Life. You remember Prairie Life, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they were kind of the hot spot in town. And the biggest thing, their biggest mistake is that they didn't re-put that capital constantly back into the building. And Lifetime does, plus Lifetime, I mean, like they're a huge corporation. And so they
stay ahead of the game because like racquetball has fallen off. It used to be, racquetball and squash have fallen off. So what do? Well, you get rid of those. You update your real estate and your property to reflect pickleball and new things that are coming, where you're right. That's exactly what Prairie Lane missed out on. They just took advantage of, people are just going to keep dinging us every month and paying that. And it's like, no, eventually they're going to get bored.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, what's funny is, at least in town here, the other place that did a great job was the Jewish Community Center. And they're a community center.
They're continuing to do it.
They continue to do it. They reinvest. And so at least from having had owned my own business, it's and operating, I had a 5,000 square foot facility. I really it's really cool to see how that large of a corporation has then not only, do they do it in one location, but they do it in 162 locations or something like that. And so it's an impressive place to work.
I want to spend some time so we can talk about, latching on to someone else's platform or building your own, and neither one is right or wrong. It's just maximizing, the opportunity in either setup. And I think, I don't know, unless you're someone that wants to compete with Lifetime, it's like you're going to go and start a gym and compete with people like them. So why not just join them and build within that and leverage all the resources that they have? So I think that's a path. Plus, and perhaps we can get into this, because a lot of our audience currently is in Nebraska. So feel free to plug along the way, but I'm sure you do, corporate gigs and, offsite stuff outside of Lifetime as well. But it's my belief that entrepreneurship, success in general, and your fitness go hand in hand. And there's a lot of things that you can extract and apply to building a business that you learn through being healthy, staying in shape, and pushing the envelope with your fitness. And so you've been in the industry for 30 years, and we haven't gotten into this yet, but you're a kettlebell sport world champion, first American to receive and forgive the mispronunciation
That's
in
right.
advance, the Sergey Mission Award, first American male to achieve Master of Sport International class ranking in kettlebell, and the 5-time U.S. record holder for the long cycle. Like, that stuff is pretty legit too. And the skills and the perseverance and frankly the shit that it takes to accomplish at a high level in that area of your life, all those same principles and attributes are required to be successful in business. So I want to unpack that side of your life. Like, why even shoot for that stuff? Like, what was the training like involved? Like, what were the days like when you were looking to give up? Like, let's go push the ball down that path.
I want to know how the hell you got into kettlebell. So start there and then go down that path. Because when you started this game, like, right, that kettlebell, yeah, everybody knows what it is now, but like then, like, you guys were kind of creating the own game, right?
A little bit. So I guess
Maybe it's been around
really,
longer than I
no,
realized.
no,
I don't
no.
know.
It's been around since. All right. So the kettlebell's been around forever. The kettlebell sport, about, I could be wrong on this, but I think it's a Russian military sport. And I want to
It
say
seems like it would be.
It is, and I'll explain a little bit more about that, the why of that. But I want to say, I'm terrible with dates, but I want to say it was about 1940 is when the IUKL, which is the International Union of Kettlebell Lifters, kind of formed, and they started formalizing it more.
Even before that, the Circle for Amateur, I just Googled it, the Circle for Amateur Athletics began in Russia and Europe in 1885.
Yeah, it's old, and it was
wow.
So I was like, completely off.
But it didn't until this guy named Pavel Tsatsouline, who started Dragon Door, came to the US. It didn't really get popularized, and essentially, I actually pulled up some of my own notes on this. So basically what happened is when they were firing cannonballs, this is how it became set in the military, is they wanted an increased rate of fire. And so what they did is they literally just attached a handle to a cannonball and started having guys lift it. And they started increasing rate of fire because these guys would be more efficient. And so it eventually, developed into this contest and the sport. And like when they would first do these contests, they didn't have time limits. So you'd have, so at the professional, what they consider the professional division. So what I competed at, you have, there's kind of three major events. And well, actually two major events. The first one is the biathlon, which consists of a 10-minute snatch with a 32-kilogram bell, which is basically 70 pounds. And you get one hand switch. So you are swinging, you cannot set it down. So you're swinging over your head, basically 5 minutes to your right, 5 minutes to your left. And whoever gets the most reps wins.
70 pounds with one hand as many times
and
as
not putting it, it's not touching the ground.
Right. Yeah. You can't set it down. And that's the first half of the biathlon. Then you'd rest like 30 minutes and you do another 10-minute set. This is how they're typically ran today. And you do the jerk. So you have two 32-kilogram bells and you go from basically like your chest to your waist and you jerk them overhead for 10 minutes. And
I thought I crushed a workout this morning, but apparently I'm a puss. They're devastatingly hard. The other event is called the long cycle, which is basically just the clean and jerk. And so you take, again, two 32-kilogram bells, you clean them up, you jerk them overhead, you take them back down and repeat and get as many reps as you can. And so in 2014, I set the American record with 81 reps. And at that time in my weight class, 86 was the world record. And so like, I was like, right couldn't
there.
Eke out 5 more, bro?
No, I honestly, I could not. If you want to go to YouTube, you can look it up and you can see that there was not a shot.
There was no more.
There was no more. but taking a step back, what it was is that I remember it was about 2007 when I got introduced to it, to kettlebell sport specifically. And I'd been an Olympic weightlifter since 12 years old. And so I competed at like collegiate nationals and things like that. And I was decent at Olympic weightlifting. But I was like an endurance athlete, and I had crazy stamina. And so when I saw this, I was like, I'm like, oh, that's endurance Olympic weightlifting. And I'm just like, I bet I'd be pretty good at this. And so in 2007, I flew out to California because there is like a handful of people really doing this. And there's this Steve Cotter, who was kind of one of the first guys to really get involved in kettlebell sport in the US. And so I trained with him for like 2 weeks. It was only a week. It was a week. And he's like, hey, you're doing pretty good at this. You should show up to the IKFF Nationals. And it was in Novi, Michigan that year. And so I had like 2 24-kilogram bells at the time. And I left them on my back porch or in my garage. And that's where I would train for my first meet. And that first meet in Novi, I think with 24s, I did 92 reps. And at the time, I set an American record with that. And so at that point,
after
I was
like a week of training?
No, that was like 4 months. 4 months of training.
It's still pretty impressive.
And so I was like, you know what? Like, I was looking at the records and the stats and who was doing what. And I was like, I bet I kind of set this goal for myself to become the first American male to achieve what's known as master of class international sport. So basically, once you do that, you're competing at an Olympic level. And so that was my goal. And that took about 7 years to achieve. So, that's pretty much how I got into it. But really what the beauty of it, why the Russian military uses it, is because so much is about controlling your breath and basically how much work can you produce under duress. And the thing is like, you don't, like when you do 81 reps, you're not going ham. Like you really aren't. Like you're trying to stay as calm as possible. And you actually don't, when you're lifting, you're not actually counting your reps. You're focusing on your breath. And there's like, let's see, one in the backswing, one in the catch, one when you bend your knees, one when you catch overhead, one when you stand up. So like
40. You're not even focused on lifting. You're just focused on timing out your breath.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you can get yourself into this Zen state where it becomes rhythmic, you kind of lose
where the flow comes from. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You totally get into this flow space. So like when I just said, when I did the 81 reps, I remember at about 7.5 minutes looking at the clock, because my goal at that time was to hit 75. And because that would get me to that international class ranking. And I remember looking at the clock and being like, oh, holy shit, I'm gonna crush this. Like, and just pushing through. But it was like 7 minutes of basically kind of just being zoned out. But it teaches you the skill of like calming the fuck down. Like when there's 140 pounds essentially on your chest, right? You have to learn to just slow down and take care of the most important thing in front of you. And the thing is, if you miss a breath, you start missing rhythm. And if you stop breathing, you're totally screwed. And so I still, like, I don't really compete anymore. But
you coach guys practice at a high level?
Yeah. I have
kettlebell?
Yep. I still have, well, currently no, but I've had a couple people set some world records in the marathon in their weight classes. I've had a couple masters or like guys that are in the older classes, hit their like master of sport and things like that. So I for a long time, I coached a lot of people in doing it. And I still have like 2 clients that do it, that like compete in kettlebell sport. And it becomes very specific. right? I mean, it's
Sounds like it. Yeah.
it's actually, I would almost compare it. It's more similar to like rowing than it is to weightlifting, because so much is about how relaxed you can be and still produce a ton of work. But it's such a great analogy for like the rest of my life that I still lift and practice it at least 2 times a week, where I'm doing, basically acting like I'm training.
It's almost like martial arts with the discipline side of things.
100%.
I mean, a little bit, right? Like,
no, like almost, actually the 2 categories that you see of people that do it are martial artists, and then and endurance athletes, like triathletes.
That's what I love about like
and
combat,
psychopaths.
Right? Yeah.
and psychopaths. Yes. I'm sorry, what are you saying about combat training?
Oh, I love combat sports for that, right? It's like, who can remain calm, see things as literally shit is hitting the fan, right? And that's
right
where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
No better feeling in the world than skin on skin, whether it's fucking or fighting, my dad used to say. So
that's funny.
Yeah.
Brad Troyer wisdom drop right there.
Yeah. And so essentially that's why it became a Russian military sport. And so what's funny is when it first came to America, though, it came through this Pavel Tsatsouline and Dragon Door. And Pavel treated the kettlebell kind of like it was a powerlifting tool. So there's like a lot of bracing, a lot of really getting tight, a lot of very like tense movement to
explosive movements.
Yes. And I compare it to like, it's kind of like using a wrench when you need a hammer, like it's a hammer, right? Where like, or like even more so using a hammer when you need a wrench. And then all of a sudden someone's like, no, man, hey, look at this. Look at how this wrench is. And you're like, oh shit, I didn't know it could do this. And so it's just the nature of the bell. It's this really great kinetic tool. And you have to, it's like when you swing it, it's like swinging a bucket of water. Like if you ever like taking a bucket, swinging over your head, that's the feeling that needs to occur. Not this like getting really rigid. So there's this relaxed intensity, or this relaxed, you're actually taking slack out of the body. And you do the same thing actually in Olympic weightlifting. Those guys don't get super tight. They just take the slack out of their body. It's similar principles to like fighting. Like you don't want to be tight in a fight. You want to be loose and then snap and go, and whatever it is. I mean, that's true of all martial arts. And so that's where this tool really takes its place and brings itself over. Now you can use it for 100 others. There are millions of other things. It's still a weight. It's still hard to lift. It's all these things. But if you want to do like, it's learning to know what, like, throughout the industry, knowing there's no perfect tool. It's just learning what is the best tool for that job, or what your objective is, or where you are currently at and where we need to go and what tool would work for that. So like, I mean, a lot of times, like one of your best like strength power tools is just going to be a barbell, because you can continually load it up. I mean, at a certain point, I don't know, there's like 200-pound kettlebells, but they're so awkward and everything else that you're not going to be able to move explosively with it. Where a barbell, 200 pounds, that's not like that impressive of a clean or a snatch for like your top end athletes. And so, there's like anything else, it's a tool and it takes technique but that Pavel, the Tsatsouline, when he brought it in, it was actually pretty brilliant, because most Americans really understood like powerlifting, bodybuilding, and he used kind of those principles to bring it in and like to get tight. And so you'd feel exhausted every time you used it.
I imagine too that if you like, I'm just picturing like if I have, kettlebell, obviously this isn't a kettlebell, it's top to my Yeti, but it has a handle like one. If I had a kettlebell and I just went out and started swinging it around, I guess my hesitation would be like, I'm gonna hurt myself because I'm not used to moving my body in this way. So talk to us about like, if you're gonna start down that path? Like, what are some things you need to look out for?
So this is my co-host's way of doing what we discussed before we hit the record button and getting some free information on what he's wanting to do now, because he's trying to wrap up 75 hard here. I know what he's doing.
I love it. All right. All right. So all right. So one, if you go to kettlebellwarriorfitness.com and basically put in an email, there's a 7-day deal. I also have a total, it's called Kettlebell Calibrate. I think I sell it for like $15, and it's basically breaks down every movement on the kettlebell. The biggest thing is learning, I guess, like if you're just going to swing the bell, a lot of it is learn to keep it close to your hips and waiting for the bell to come back into you. So unlike a deadlift, the kettlebell works on a pendulum. A deadlift, you're going to pull that in a straight line. And so, if you're over it, you just stand it up and you're putting it back down, hinging through the hips. Well, with the kettlebell, the momentum is swinging back into you. So like in the backswing of it, you're actually accepting that energy. And you're not resisting it like in a deadlift, right? Like as you're hinged. And then as you like drive forward, the biggest key is that as you drive forward is that you're pushing the ground away, and you're essentially driving your hips up as opposed to like pushing your hips forward or humping the bell. That's the biggest mistake most people make, is they'll like swing and they'll like thrust their hips into the bell. Where
I feel like that's what I do with my kettlebell. I'm going to be honest. Now I'm on your website. Yeah, I'm going to have to do this.
And so it's and that Calibrate has like, so there's tons of drills where I break it down and block people into positions. So like one is like you take like a bench and like just a standard like bench for dumbbells, and you set a kettlebell on it. You stand on the floor over that kettlebell with like your calves against the bench. You tip the bell to its side. You get your spine really long. You hinge back with those hands tight between the hips. Then, swing the bell up, and then you let it come back into you, and you set the bell back down on the bench. So it's kind of laying at an angle. You reset the spine, do it again. And then you start doing it where you're not hitting the bench. You're just swinging from that point. And that will teach you that basic swing. And then after that, you start learning how to when you start the bell from the floor, you start it out in front of you. So you don't set it up like it's a deadlift. You'd set it up actually, 6 inches out in front of you, or just in front of the shoulders, so your hands can kind of get to it. So you snap it back like it's a football, right between the legs. And then once it gets into the hips, you're standing straight up, and that bell is going to have a little float. You wait for the triceps to come back into the chest. You hinge back to the hips and repeat. And
look at this shit. You could still be coaching, guys.
Yeah.
Just like riding a bike. You're back into it.
Well, I still teach. You know what? It's like one of these things. If people want to learn kettlebells from me, I'm like, great, let's do it. Or if there's something that, we want to make it a little more interesting, then that's what we do. But if I have access to everything, and depending upon where, my clients are at, I'm going to meet them where they're at. And I'm going to use all the tools I have available.
And it seems like one of the best full body workouts you can do. Like I just do, like I said, the swing. Like I bought the Bowflex one that's like adjustable up to 40 pounds or whatever. And it is. I mean, it works you like a dog if you're doing it. Like I said, I think I'm doing it probably wrong now after hearing this, but you still like from legs, back, arms, shoulders, you feel it.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, you can do essentially everything with it. And like the vocabulary of movement of which you can build is incredible. And it all, like a lot of it comes down, like if you can learn to clean and or snatch a bell properly, then it kind of opens up this whole laundry list of movements of which you can start incorporating it into, where you can start like just dynamically moving from movement to movement to movement. Like if you go to my Instagram, you can see a whole bunch of it. There's some other guys that are doing some really like kettlebell, like juggling it's another like sport in Russia. Yeah. So these guys
seem safe.
You got to look this up. So there's this guy named, his handle is Daring in He's out in Brooklyn, and I've gone out to Brooklyn and trained with him because some of the stuff he does is just absolutely amazing.
Is it the
There's like
Flowing Dutchman, or is that someone else?
that's someone else.
Okay.
It is Colin Daring. Let's see. I'm now gonna just look him up real quick. Yeah, Daring 101, Daring. Like he basically, there's like classic. So again, the Russians have made this into a competition, right? And he had taken a number of styles from like the Chinese have stuff. They look like stones with handles, and they have a little different style of like flipping the bells and flipping the stones around. And he started combining all this. And basically what he did was like jazz. And it's amazing. I mean, he started going out in the park, practicing, throwing it around. I mean, this guy, it's phenomenal, the things that Colin does. And he's great. He's a fantastic instructor. Man, he's out in Brooklyn. But like he started taking this again to a whole nother level of like, this is what's possible. And the thing is that like, you know, with a lot of this stuff, you have to be loose. And the sports translation to a lot of it is like, you actually learn to get into a flow with these things. If you're juggling it, or if you're snatching it, or long cycling, and it becomes this whole thing where you kind of have to just be super, super present and let go of expectations and just react to what is going on in front of you.
So you had mentioned earlier, and I want to get into tying into entrepreneurial style people and high performing people, because I would imagine that's the majority of your client base is you know,
right,
important, powerful people. And I feel like even myself, who, as Landon alluded to, doing 75 hard right now on day 73, working out twice a day, to me, because I've seen the videos of kettlebell swings and then those bars with the ball at the end, where it's more of it's a dance.
Right. Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, that looks so intimidating, and I work out every day. Right.
Right.
So you had mentioned that you meet people where they're at. And I'm curious to know, when you're meeting with successful people, and by successful, I'm intentionally meaning success in business and finance. Because there's a lot of folks who are successful that are fat and overweight and deeply unhappy. And that's part of the reason why they're coming to you to help fix that. And then there's folks that have gotten as far as they can get fitness wise on their own, and it's time to hire someone. And then there's folks where they're ready to turn this almost activity into more of a hobby, to where they're getting deeper into it. Right. So I guess, what do you find when someone comes to you? There's typically a reason why they haven't focused on their fitness up to that point. There's a block. So are you just saying like, all right, here's your workout plan? Or are you digging into like what their block is to increase the likelihood that they're actually going to take action on the advice that you give them? Help us understand the problems that you come across and
So
how
the
you
biggest
help
thing,
work through them.
Sorry. The biggest thing is I don't care who you are, no one likes change, even if it's for the better. There's this great stat of kids that were taken out of abusive home and put into a good foster home. Within 6 months, they would do something like fight at school, steal a car,
Something stupid.
shoplift, something stupid, because chaos is what they understand. We are all wired that way. And so when I try and find where someone is at, and when I try and measure their progress, I try not to measure from like, this is where we started, and then we just had this awesome, let's just say it's a weight loss goal. You just lost 70 pounds. Congratulations. And that is awesome. It's a huge change. And I, and, like, people make a big deal about, oh, I did it in X amount of time. All right, that's great. What typically happens is they'll hit that 70-pound loss, and then their life starts creeping in. My question is, where did it stop? Okay, this is our new success, this is our new starting point. And now can we start to slide it back here? Because a lot of like physical change, so first of all, as a trainer, I'm there for the journey with them and to help steer them in the right direction. Their successes and failures are not my successes and failures. I am their support team. I'm their corner man. And that is my role.
A lot of times you're probably just a cheerleader too, right? Like,
right?
keep going.
Just, hey man, come on, where you been? Like, try and hold them accountable. Try and really be there for them in the way that they need someone to hold them accountable and get them there, and to create true change in their life. And true change in the sense of that it is actually improving the quality of their life. Because there's a lot of times you can see people go like, they can make huge changes in their nutrition and things like that, and they become OCD about it. You gotta still be able to live with all the other people that you function with, right? Like you can't become, it's how do you actually integrate this into your life?
You still got to be dad when you go home sometimes. You can't just go be meat stick at the gym all night, every night now, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, 100%. And you got to go entertain clients, and you have to go do all of these things that these people have to do. So what are the steps that we're going to make, and how are we going to implement that into your life to make that better, and it to be a you stress and not another stressor? And so a lot of times what I'm trying to like wade through as like our first few sessions come on is like, how heavy is the stress that we're dealing with, and how hard do we need to work out, or what type of consistency and base do we need to build so that we can improve the quality of your life drastically and make this a habit for you and something that you enjoy the way that I enjoy it. Because I love this. Like it's a part of me. I mean, it is.
You don't do it for 30 plus years and turn it into a career without having it be a passion, for sure.
And so that, and so it can't be a self-loathing process. Like, oh, I'm this fat piece of shit, and I don't, no, we cannot do that. And the thing is,
do you think it could start that way? I know for me, the reason why I'm
probably
back on that
probably what gets people walk through the doors.
Yeah, because I've had when I was at my worst, I've had a friend just look at me and be like, dude, you look like shit. Like, the fuck you gonna do about it?
I tell buddies that from time to time.
And I'm like, and I was pissed. And then I looked in the mirror through a critical lens, and I was like,
he's not wrong.
What the fuck? He's right. So I feel like sometimes it's the initiation, but then it's all right, you gotta measure your progress and stack those little wins and get addicted to the feeling of progress and the process that it takes, as opposed to, let's share a silly example that has nothing to do with fitness, but I am not handy in the least bit, and Landon knows. And Landon, you shut your mouth. You don't share any stories. But anyways, I call Landon with the dumbest questions, and I get so frustrated because I like being good at things. And I had this realization yesterday as I installed outdoor speakers on our lanai that took 4.5 hours and 3 Home Depot trips, but that's besides the point. But
and 2 FaceTime calls to me.
And 2 FaceTime. But hey, one was to show you it was done. It was one.
Yes.
Yes. But I had this aha moment where I was like, the only way for me to get good at this is to do this, right? Is to do stuff around the house. And it kind of got me in the mindset of like, all right, I'm just going to, rather than getting stressed out and freaked out about the process of whatever it is that we're doing, like the wainscoting we plan on putting on this weekend, like I'm looking forward to enjoying the process of learning that skill set as opposed to getting stressed out and intimidated by it. And I think that can be applied to fitness as well, right? Not be intimidated, not be stressed out, not be pissed off, but being like, hey, I'm gonna learn something every day. I'm gonna make a little bit of progress every day.
Right. No, 100%. And
I can relate to it. I mean, I hate this guy for getting me started on the 75 hard journey, and I technically failed it due to my reading portion, but I've still embraced it. I've spent north of $5,000 now on my personal home gym down in my basement that I just had
and
two more
stupid
orders show
you,
up
stupid
for.
you, all you needed was a kettlebell.
Yeah, I know, right? Which I already had. Yeah, I mean, I've been frustrated from the fact that like I got on the scale this morning and I am at the exact same weight I started at. And I'm like, what the hell? But then I talked to my wife and she's like, yeah, but you look different,
Yeah.
and I feel different, right? I feel good. I feel, went down, crushed workout this morning and you get done and it's like, you feel like shit because you're all trembly and weak, but you feel good for the accomplishment. And I love that feeling, right? So I get it.
Yeah, no, it's 100%, right? Like there is this like, all right, we got it. So, all right, back to David's thing. So like when your friend talked to you and was like, you look like shit, man, what's going on? Okay. That's the step before someone comes and sees me. All right.
Yep.
And so I don't have to have that conversation with them. They're there, they're asking for help. Right. You know what I mean? And so the thing is that we're going to start off exactly where they're at. So what I'm going to do is just sit down and be like, okay, let's talk about your days. What are you doing? What do you get up at what time? Great. Okay. What do you have for breakfast? Do you have breakfast? What are you drinking? What is everything that you are putting into your body? And we go throughout the day. We go through their schedule of what it looks like. What time do they go to bed?
Sorry to interject because I want you
No.
to keep going through this, but I like the question asking as opposed to like, all right, so, welcome to Bill Esch training. Here's what you're going to do for a breakfast. But you're asking them because you probably, I would imagine, have people say, well, I know I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I've been eating X, and I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I've been only drinking Y, and they know intuitively, generally, what they should and shouldn't be doing. You don't have to be the bad guy and take it away from them. They're having that realization themselves because you're asking questions.
Right. And that's a lot of it. And two, it gives me an idea of like, okay, this is where we're starting. So how heavy of a change do I want to make? Right. So there's this, like when eating, all right, in general, with eating, eating is simple. That doesn't mean it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everybody in general needs some type of whole food based diet. And I'm a big believer in like, you need animal source proteins and fats. You need vegetables, and for your carbohydrates, you want them to be as complex as possible, meaning that they look pretty close to its original source. So, this is a whole wormhole of which we can go down, but like, if you're having
We're
grains,
friends with Terry, so we get it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's if you're having grains, right, like they're still in their grain seed form pretty much. Right.
Oats.
And whatever, and by like typically grains, most of the time I'm kicking out most of your gluten grains, which are wheat, barley, and rye. And the issue with gluten and digestion in general is that people will talk about like this thing called leaky gut syndrome. Mm-hmm. And basically the easiest way to understand this is that when you eat, everything you eat, I don't care how organic it is, it's toxic. That's why you take a dump. If it's not in your bloodstream, it passes through you. And so what essentially gluten does, and they actually put it in antipsychotic medications, is that it opens up the villi or the cell junctures of the stomach. So it makes them wider and it allows for more proteins and other things to get through and into the bloodstream that normally wouldn't, because it upregulates this enzyme called zonulin within the body. And so when these can get through, they can create a higher amount of inflammation. So like the average American eats 80 pounds of additives a year. And that's back from, I haven't even looked that stat up, but that was like 2014. The average American,
I bet that's higher now.
I'm sure it's higher. Like the average like sugar intake is crazy, because like early 1900s, late 1800s, we had the average was 2 pounds per person per year. 1970, so when Earl Butz became the head of agriculture in 1969, we started planting fence row to fence row of corn. And industrial farming really started at about that point. 1975, we were at 25 pounds of sugar per person per year. We're currently, well, as of 2000, I want to say it was like 14 was the last time I looked. We're at 146 pounds of sugar per person per year. And so, and sugar has no nutritional value to it. Like, I mean, it literally, I mean, if you think, I mean, it literally rots bones, right? Like you can put, have you ever seen the stuff where they just soak like if you want to clean your golf clubs, put your golf clubs in Coca-Cola. Yeah. And it just rots it away, right?
You guys are killing me right now.
So there's so many things that like
talk to us. So you mentioned Coca-Cola, mentioned Oreos. Landon,
the trick with most food is that it ends up being this combinations of fats, salts, and carbohydrates, of which actually affect you hormonally and will get you to eat more. So like the one company that I'd say that stays really, at least tells you that they're going to do it, is like Pringles. Like once you pop, you can't stop. And it's like no one gets away and has a serving size of any type of cracker, chip, cookie, whatever it is. I don't care who you are. What happens is that like basically, we'll just say salt or sodium chloride, for instance. So the biggest difference between like Coca-Cola and RC Cola is that Coca-Cola has sodium chloride in it. And when the body tastes sodium chloride, it believes it's actually getting
tastes a hell of a lot better than RC Cola. Let's add that.
It does. It does. That's very true. All this stuff is tasty, and I am not judging anyone that drinks it or takes it in. It's just really bad for you. So the thing is that when the body tastes it, it believes that it's getting those 60 to 90 trace minerals that we'd always find in the combination with salt. It doesn't exist. So when it hits the stomach, it relays a signal to the APSTAT center in the brain saying, hey, you didn't get those minerals. Keep looking, keep drinking, keep whatever, right?
That's why I drink 6 of them a day.
Yeah, part of it. And it becomes really hard to stop.
Yeah,
because it triggers itself to be addictive, which is a great business plan, but it's not good for health. I mean, on top of then you're consuming all this sugar and other things. Once you start messing with like insulin, so think about like a pasta meal. You sit down, you get, and especially like how we make pasta in the US, is you sit down and you get about halfway through the plate and you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can eat anymore. Wait 5 minutes. The stretch receptors in your stomach have relaxed. And what happens is that like you've had this blood sugar, well, you've had a huge spike of insulin, which causes a blood sugar crash. Well, high blood sugar is bad, but low blood sugar is death. And so your body automatically kicks on ghrelin, and ghrelin says, hey, keep eating, keep looking. Where like if you have a higher protein, I mean, one of the advantages of like an Atkins diet or carnivore or whatever the fanciest terms for this is now, is that proteins produce a peptide YY, which creates satiation and actually will help kick on more leptin, which then tells you that you're full, that you don't need to eat anymore. And so a lot of my trick is like when working with people is trying to get them into more of a whole foods routine. So like if you get up in the morning, if you can do like eggs and oatmeal, like steel cut oats, berries.
Every morning I wake up and I eat 2 eggs and 3 strips of bacon. How am I doing on that, Bill?
That's good. I'm all for that. You know, the first thing it does is like once you wake up in the morning and you're looking at like circadian and ultradian rhythms. Okay. So when you're trying to measure out people's energy levels, basically, once you wake up, your cortisol should spike. So let's just say on average, you're getting up about 6 in the morning, your cortisol should rise and start to plane out. And then about like 8, 9, 10 o'clock, you should start winding down. Your food and like basically taking in food throughout the day should kind of help that curve and keep that energy up. What typically happens though is like most people get up in the morning and maybe they have like a yogurt or they have orange juice, which is the worst. Because
I do have a glass of orange juice with my 2 eggs and bacon.
Okay, so start cutting that out. Like it's a real simple fix. Stick with coffee. You want to do the coffee and coconut oil or ghee or MCT oil.
Coffee, but okay. I'll go with water and a protein shake. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah, fantastic. Because what happens is you'll find once you cut that out, even though you're taking the caloric content down, and you would think logically, oh, I'm going to be hungrier sooner, is you won't have this blood sugar spike. Because essentially, if you think a glass of orange juice is going to minimally take 4 oranges worth of sugar and fructose without any fiber to take that of which you're drinking. And so it automatically starts to spike, and then you start to get these energy dips throughout the day. And so what you want your meals, if it's 1 or 6, is you want them to support that curve and hold those blood sugars steady. And so the high fat, high protein breakfast, in general, this isn't for everyone, but in general, will hold people's sugars or blood sugars more stable and keep their cortisol at a normal level. The thing is that most people think like, because people talk about cortisol being a bad thing, it's not. The other way, if you don't have cortisol, you don't get up. and like basically once you're awake, you're breaking everything down. Once you sleep, you're totally anabolic. And so making sure that you can keep those cycles where from basically, that you're eating, that you're keeping your energy stable and steady throughout the day, and then you go to bed at a regular time, and that you sleep throughout the night, you're going to, at night, like when you go to sleep, you're going to basically, if you get two cycles of REM in, and then basically at that point, you're producing melatonin, serotonin, testosterone, like all of your hormones are naturally occurring, growth hormone, all those things. One of the biggest problems with like alcohol consumption is that it kills basically production of growth hormone. And that's why no one sleeps well. I mean, you pass out, but then you wake back up, right? With alcohol, it totally disrupts sleep, and it disrupts that anabolic cycle of which we should all, anywhere from, we'll say 6 to 9 hours of sleep, depending upon who you are, solidly throughout the night, so that you can recover and redo it again. And it's crucial. And so when asking people to do these things, it's not a small thing. When asking people to change how they eat, I mean, eating is a social, emotional, spiritual event. 88% of serotonin is produced in your gut lining. So what you're asking them to do is a huge ask. And the thing is you want it to stick. So first of all, we have to find things that you like. Like if you like bacon and eggs, awesome. That's going to do the job in the morning. Maybe
the issue is I don't like a single fruit or vegetable.
Yeah, I'm not so worried about that. Like, in all honesty, I think listen, I think they're important, but like as far as like blood sugars go, depending
I've gone 38 years without them. So, I mean,
yeah,
it must not be that important. Like legitimately, other than French fries, I don't need a single fruit or vegetable. And I don't know if you consider a French fry, because I don't like potatoes or mashed potatoes. It's got to be fried. So not exactly a health nut.
But go on. What do you got? What do you got?
Give us like sort of like I don't know, beginners, intermediate, and advanced sort of rundown of like, hey, a beginner should have this for breakfast, intermediate should have this for breakfast, advanced would have this for breakfast, and not like the measurements and the
right.
grams of each, but just categorically, like throughout the day, what's a beginner, intermediate, advanced example, so that someone listening to this can go and start making those changes in their life.
So the first thing I'd start off with, so breakfast. So just getting people to start setting that that standard of breakfast. And now let me take a step back real quick. I'm going to use like 3 meals a day. Now there's times where like I'll have people eat 6 meals a day. There's times where I'll have people fast. All right. So there's times where we'll have, we'll structure it out that that person's only eating 1 meal a day. There's a lot that can go into that, but typically multiple meals throughout the day. And even if you snack, I will consider that a meal. Every time you put something in your mouth, if it's a lot, if it's a little, it's still a meal. It's still something that we are putting into our body, and our body's going to have to convert into the fuel and tissues and things, that building blocks of what we need. And so protein is the building blocks of our body. To be more biologically available, we need fat. So having like things like eggs is great in the morning. 2, 3 eggs. I eat, like, when I do it, eggs don't really satisfy me that much. So I eat like 8 minimally.
And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't really overeat too much protein, because like I said, if you don't use it, you just kick it out.
I mean, the thing is that it self-regulates. Like, there's a point of where you won't be hungry typically with it. Like it's hard. It's truly hard to overeat on. And same with like vegetables, like for the most part, like it's really, really hard to overeat on vegetables. But typically in the morning, what I will categorically like have people do is have a higher fat, higher protein breakfast. So you can pick it. If you want a steak in the morning, I'm all for it. If you want, I do that a lot. I do pork shoulder a lot because I don't love eggs. When depending upon their output, you do need, like, at a certain point, if you are doing a lot of high intensity workouts, you're going to need carbohydrates. And so typically by midday, what I'm looking for people to do is to change from using like a flour-based carbohydrate, to either like potatoes, yams, like a white rice of some kind.
I could do white rice.
Yeah, white rice is great.
Potatoes and yams are not gonna fly.
Right.
White rice I could do.
There's squash, there's eggplant, there's all these things, but white rice is typically gluten-free. And for most people, when it's white, the issue with it is that, as opposed to like brown rice, basically there's a sheath. So essentially no grain wants to be eaten. That's not how its seed gets spread. So like when you eat an apple, or an animal eats a piece of fruit, a lot of times what happens is the seed goes down through the digestive tract and then comes out with the feces. It comes out basically with fertilizer. And so there's this give-take relationship between host and food. Well, with grain, it typically how it spreads is either through the wind, animal brushes up against it, gets caught, and they have like phytates and things on the sheath of it. Now that sheath is more fibrous, so it lowers the kind of blood sugar response to it. But if you have a number of like leaky gut issues going on, that sheath can cause problems. So when you take it off, essentially the white rice has less problems of there being like leaky gut or causing irritation, but it also has a higher like glycemic index to it.
Are you getting it? Are you getting at the like when we make our rice in the rice cooker? Like we rinse the starch off of it. Is that what you're getting at, or is that different?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's when you rinse it off, you're rinsing off a lot of that. The other is that you're also rinsing off a lot of what might be like basically anything that happens in the process of them packaging the rice and getting it to you. And so you'll clean off a lot of that. But a lot of that like film that you see on top of the water, once you rinse it off and let it soak, is you're breaking up a lot of those phytates and things such as that can cause basically gut irritation problems. The other issue, so take a step back. And then I typically am asking people at this point to have some type of vegetable. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's green beans. I don't care if it's, asparagus or you name it, broccoli, any of those things. But my thing is trying to get them with like a really balanced plate. And then and so by the time you get to lunch, I'm looking for a little more carbohydrate, looking for that animal source protein and some type of vegetable.
A steak burrito from Chipotle with plain white rice, like I eat about 4 days a week. Right? I mean, that's not,
yeah.
My wife busts my chops about it, but I tell her, I'm like, I don't feel bad about eating that for lunch because in my opinion, it's pretty natural stuff. Like, again, I don't get the fajita veggies, and I get plain white rice, steak, salt, the hot salsa, and cheese, sour cream.
Right. And so it's from that is a great move and actually example into if people were doing the full burrito before and now they're doing a burrito bowl. That's a better step. Even things like taking out any type of a further step would be taking out the dairy. Dairy in general just causes a lot of issues for people. And it's not that dairy is necessarily bad, but if you are trying to lose weight, even the proteins in dairy get what's known as an insulin-like growth factor response, because the design of dairy or milk is to make baby mammals grow. Yep. And so what's funny with it is the higher the fat content and the lower the protein, sugar, carb content, probably the healthier the dairy is. So zero fat dairy, which is the opposite,
probably helps you blow up even more, right?
Well, what's funny is so if you go higher fat, it's going to be way more satiating. The issue that people see in it again is that they're looking at the caloric content, because fat has a lot more calories than carbs or protein have. But the thing is that it doesn't cause an insulin response. It actually can help hold blood sugars more stable. Typically, you won't eat as much of it, but again, it's not if you're trying to lean out, it's not going to be my go-to of being oh yeah, we should get more dairy in. And a lot of it just has to do, it all has to do with that. Dinner typically looks pretty similar. And the thing is chicken, rice, steak, pork, salmon, I don't care, and some type of vegetable. And that's what we're shooting for 3 times a day. And if you're hungry, have another meal. If we need to put in a post-workout protein shake, there's tons of good brands out there. Thorne Nutrition is awesome. Did
you say Thor or Thorne?
Thorne.
Thorne.
THORNE, I believe it is. They do medical grade kind of basically supplements. And they have depending upon how sensitive to dairy you are, they have a vegan protein, which is fantastic. It digests very well for people and things like that. But that's as far as being a base, that's what we're looking at. And then water. How much water are you drinking? You basically want, so if I weigh, we'll just say you weigh 200 pounds. You want half your body weight. You want 100 ounces of water a day. And then from there, I don't care if it's not organic. I don't care if it's, we're just trying to move the stick from where you're at. Now, organic is better. Grass-fed is better. Wild caught is better. But if you aren't eating any of that shit to begin with, then I don't want any barriers in you making improvements in your health. And so that's always our first goal. And the numbers that I give out to people with, as far as with eating, is if this was a grade, okay? And we are looking at each time you ate a meal, you got a point for it or whatever. So there's 7 days a week, 3 meals a day. You're looking at 21 meals. The average American gets up and has a bowl of cereal or a yogurt, maybe a bagel. They have lunch. So maybe they go to Subway, they have a sandwich at Jimmy John's. And then dinner, and I'm being generous here, maybe they're having chicken and rice and some vegetables. So they are doing 7 meals out of 21, which are good. And again, this is being generous. So at this point, they have a 33% for a grade. And it's clear. It's clear if you look at the obesity stats in the US.
I mean, just walk around in public, and look.
Right. That's, and I'm being generous with that 7 out of 21 meals. Now, here comes the kicker. Now we've started cleaning up our breakfast. Maybe we're having eggs and bacon in the morning. Maybe we're having, I don't know, maybe they're doing a steak in the morning. Okay. And then lunch is a sandwich and dinner's chicken and rice, right? So now we're doing 14 out of 21 meals. And you're like, fuck yeah, I'm a rock star. I'm killing this. Yeah, you have a 66% for a grade. You're not going to have that body you want.
You're going to have a body that's better than what it was. And then you're going to start getting addicted to.
Yes. But this is my push. This is my push is that you have to do 19 out of 21 meals. 19 out of 21 puts you at about a 90%. At a 88 to 90%, you are crushing it. And if you can look at that and start doing the numbers on that, because most people can, now you have 3 cheat meals a week. What happens is people sneak in a cheat meal a day. That's my cheat meal. Or
you're gamifying it too, which is
right.
It's less punitive and more so gamifying.
Right. Because what happens is most people hit that 14 out of 21. And then they're like, and then they get disappointed. They're like, God, I'm not seeing the changes I thought. I thought at this point I'd be, yeah, because you're 66%. You're a D student. You're a student who never showed up to class. And now you're showing up to class and you're like, oh, this is difficult. Yeah, this change is difficult because you're not only changing how you eat, you're changing how your family eats and everyone around you. And that's a big ship to turn. But the good news is that all those meals that you are eating, they're good meals. Like when you go out for like a really good meal, you go to like a Mahogany Steakhouse or any of those, you name the fancy steakhouses around, you're getting
That's
a
the
steak.
best one, so you're good.
All right, you're getting a baked potato and vegetables, right? If you can watch out for the bread and you can stick away from the other very delicious.
I'm going tenderloin on toast points, so I get some carbs there.
Yeah.
I go French onion soup, I go ribeye, I go mac and cheese, and then usually a cheesecake.
Yeah, well, see,
I got some good, I got plenty of bad.
That's one of your 21.
Yeah. And so, and the thing that will like, as far as like making composition changes, so is that 88% of your body it's like 80% of your body is water, right? Something like that. I don't know. I'm terrible with numbers, but the biggest thing is that salt having listening to like, even like with like the bacon, like if I have people that are really trying to lose weight, one of the things we're going to do is just reduce sodium coming in. Now, if you're putting salt on it, I'm cool with that. But if it's already pre-packaged with salt, or like you're going out to eat, like going to Chipotle, right? If you're making your own steak bowl, like, right, this is the next step of doing things. It's going to be infinitely better. And you're actually going to see better results just because you took down the sodium chloride content, because you're going to retain more water. All weight loss, anything that moves in the body, the first thing it's going to deal with is water. Because all weight gain or loss is all water weight, because you're made of 80% water, right? And so we want to regulate that. And to really see those gains, like you got to start regulating that in. I'm not saying not to salt your food, but I'm saying don't have the pre-salted food. So anytime it's really hard, we can make changes with people going out to eat and have them make better choices. But you really have to start preparing your meals for yourself. And doing that as best you can if we want to see that top of the line optimal health. If we're going to make that middle stage, then it's where we're going out to eat, and making better choices when we go out to eat. But there are things like that sneak in and start causing, you're not seeing the results that you feel like you should be seeing because you're making such conscious decisions. And it's that type of stuff that sneaks in on people and hinders some of the progress of what they're going to see. And so that,
like Terry says, if you're a beginner, what he told me is like, just try and eat real food.
Yes.
Like, he's like, just doing that will help immensely. Like,
oh, it's huge.
Don't eat the prepackaged shit. Like, buy real food. And if you just eat that and start there, that's a huge step in the right direction. So like consciously, I keep telling myself, like, if I can, bacon, eggs, things like that are real foods, not processed. That's what I've been trying to consciously do more of.
And that's huge. So I'm not trying, I hope I didn't come off as if I was trying to like tell you not to do that.
No,
It's
no,
great
no. You
because
didn't.
we're
Yeah.
trying to
Landon
like
wouldn't
your
have listened.
baseline-
Landon wouldn't have
Yeah.
listened anyways, just to be clear.
This is true. I'm just saying, like, a baseline for kind of beginners to start with, right? What
Yes.
you say is just like introduce real foods.
Right.
Take out the processed shit.
And record it. Record everything. Take a week and record it. Like when I ask people to give me, hey, tell me how you eat. And I don't just say, tell me how you eat. I ask them, what did you have yesterday? Because yesterday should be good as any other day. And it's great because most of the time the response, well, yesterday wasn't as typical as, it normally is. But it is typical. It is typical. It's going to give me an idea of what's going on, because we didn't just end up where we're at. And most of the time, I mean, eating is the low-hanging fruit of making change. And it really is just shopping around the outside of the grocery store. If you shop around the outside of the grocery store, you're going to kill it. Like you absolutely will. I mean, you can go through like your vegetables and get, frozen vegetables are almost as good as fresh. Fresh organic are going to be the best. But you know what? If you're in a big time crunch, you get the steamer packets. And yes, I understand the risk of like basically plastics leaching into the vegetables and all this when you put it in the microwave.
It's got to stop somewhere, right?
But at a certain point, most people aren't even doing that. And I would rather see that starting to put vegetables in your diet than making this huge complicated process of you always being like, oh shit, I don't want to sit there and cook vegetables. I don't want to, whatever it is that's going to be that we'll use technology and start like making it easier on you. And as you get more comfortable with that, then we can start making those other pushes and trying to push that level of how optimal you want to be. And is it worth the cost? Everything costs something. They don't just give Ferraris away. Like, I mean,
I don't do the shopping in my house, but my wife does tell me how freaking expensive like real groceries are now. Like, I mean, she's like, I don't think you understand like what it costs me when I go do our food shopping. And I'm like, I probably don't.
No, it's nuts. Well, what's really crazy is pre-1970, the average American spent 46% of their paycheck on food. Currently, we spend, I want to say it might be going up now. I shouldn't say currently. As of like 3 to 4 years ago, pre-COVID, so 5 years ago, we spent 12% of our paychecks on food. Of that 12%, we spent 46% of it going out, where back pre-70, it was 12% of that 46% we spent going out. And you can definitely see that huge shift in our health. And some of it is literally just making your own food. When you look at like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have breathing, sleep, water, food, housing, sex. I think that's the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And for most of us, we have like housing, food we eat's questionable. We might not drink water. Our sleep's extremely disrupted. And depending upon, how unhappy you are, I'm guessing your relationship, if it's not that great with yourself, it's not going to be that great with your spouse. You're probably not getting laid all that often. And we keep expecting to move up, that pyramid, right? To hit, self-actualization. But if we don't take care of that base, you're not going anywhere. And we spend so much of our time. I mean, I'm in having my own business, I've done this, where I'm so focused on being successful at work, on, making more money, on just being there, that I let everything else go, thinking that one thing is going to push the rest of it up. When a lot of times we have to like just get back to our baseline.
Couldn't be
set
farther
better
from the
boundaries.
truth, right? Yep.
Yeah, set better boundaries of our time, how we spend it, how we eat, how
Who
we
we spend it
sleep.
with.
Yes, exactly. And moving and trying to move that ahead. And so it's, like there was a point. So my job, I've by far, I think being a personal trainer is one of the most bizarre jobs in the world, because you're literally working on the basics, right? It's like, all right, hey, we can eat better. All right, we're going to squat. We're going to do a push up. We're going to get up and down off the ground. We're going to carry this. We're going to work on, posture and all these things and breathing and all this stuff. I mean, like at one point, go back 50, 100 years, my profession didn't exist. And it didn't exist because people walked places. People pushed their own mowers. They just was more physical. And currently it's, it's a necessity. It's a necessity, and I'm a luxury in that necessity. And so what's weird about my job is there's that, but then I have clients that I see 5 days a week. Most of them I see 2 to 3 times a week. And so I have people that I spend 5 hours a day talking to, right? At one point I was sitting there and I'm thinking about this and I'm like, how often do I spend an hour talking to my wife or my kids uninterrupted? And so I started blocking.
Well, they have to start paying you, and then you'll give them the.
Good luck with that, homie. You do that, we'll have you back on, right? And this pod blows up.
Sorry, I had to.
It's great. It's but it's in your mindset. That's because again at this stage, most of it, I'm trading a lot of dollars for hours, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but like I started thinking, I'm like, if the 5 people you're around the most is who you end up, becoming, like you better start really choosing those people and how you spend your time. And so for me, one of the biggest things I did was my wife and I started, and even with my kids, started blocking out just hours of that we would sit and talk just at the end of my day, or whenever it was. And it didn't have to be no big productions, nothing like that, but just where we'd have these hours of just talking, right? Not necessarily about the kids or what our plans or our future was, but just being there and trying to structurally make that relationship better. Because I had this moment where I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to all these people for this long, and I'm not.
My wife and kids don't spend that much time.
Yeah, the most important people in my life, I'm not doing
that.
Yeah, and
I love that.
It's such a bizarre job because there's not many places where you actually have an hour. Well, like you guys do with this, right? Where you have an hour to talk with someone. But not only are you just doing it once, you're doing it 2 to 5 times a week. And these people that I spend my time with are great. My clients are fantastic. So I don't want to make it sound like that, but it's just like the people that I chose to share and spend my life with and grow our lives with, and my family. I at a certain point I came back to, and I'm like, you know what? I need to start dedicating the same time, the same intention to that, to really make my life more joyful and fulfilled.
It was kind of a good bow on the conversation, in that there's successful people that focus on success, and then they realize that success is more to do with money, and they start taking care of their body. And then, not necessarily in this order, but then they realize that in order to truly feel successful, you need to be moving your business, your fitness, and your family forward every single day. And if you compartmentalize those and only focus on them exclusively at different stages of your life, you feel unfulfilled. But when you focus on all 3 simultaneously, that's when you actually feel successful in the sense of the word. So I think that puts a pin in the conversation right there, is realizing that, you've been running, you've been, number 1 in this, record holder in that. building your business, working with your clients, focus on fitness, of course, because that's what you do. But then the realization of family, and I'm willing to bet that now more than ever, you feel more successful because you're focused on all those things.
For sure. I mean, I would 100% say for sure. I had expectations, in business, and things that I still want to achieve. Right. And there's many times, as I'm sure all of us have gone through, I'm like, I thought I would have done more by now. Like there's a part of me that, and, it was funny. My wife and I just celebrated our 15-year anniversary, and
Congrats on that. That's big.
Thanks. Yeah, and we've got 2 kids, so a 9-year-old boy, 13-year-old girl, and I was like writing her a letter, or writing in her card, right? And I had this, and it's funny because it sounds sad, but I had this moment where, if you would have told me that my life was going to be how it is now, who I'm with, kids I have, and get to share it, with my family, I would have been elated if you would have told me that 15 years ago. I mean, absolutely elated. And I had this real sense of gratitude, of which, I feel like that word gets kicked out a lot. So like, I almost hate using it, but like, it was, I mean, like, it was like this deep, like, oh my God, like I am so thankful that this is where I'm at, and this is how I'm spending my time, and who I'm with, and what I'm doing. And it honestly took me writing a card to my wife as I was sitting there. I was like, oh my God, if you would have told me this, 16 years ago, this is where I'd be at, I would have thought I won the lottery. And that
I can relate to that on so many levels, Bill. And I think personally, for me and probably our audience, I think a lot of it is just being an entrepreneur has allowed me to be able to do that, because I control it. Right now, there's stressors that are involved with obviously doing that. But once you've kind of rolled that rock up the mountain, now I look at like my beautiful wife, my daughter, like my friends, and I'm just like, you'd have told me, I just said, you're fucking crazy if this is where I'm gonna, you know what I mean? I grew up in a welding shop in Hershey, Nebraska, that my dad was like, you'll never do what I do because this is a really hard way to earn it, and I'm so thankful for him for pushing me. But I love, as David said, I love to build shit. I would have loved to have been in that environment.
Yeah.
But I just said, there's no way that I'll live the life that I live now. And I'm so thankful, like, for you, for having this conversation, for David, for telling me, hey, you should do this with me. I never would have thought I'd be doing this. There's just everything. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think entrepreneurialism for doing it, because if I didn't run my own show and call my own shots, I'd be 8 to 5 punching that clock and trying to get home every night and shutting off. Right.
Yeah.
Are there ups to that? Yeah. Like I don't ever get to really turn off. Like I wish some days at 5, I got to turn it off and say, forget about it. Clients' issues are no longer my issues, but I compartmentalize it, but they come with me no matter what through the weekend, everything. But I think it gives us the freedom and the lifestyle to be thankful for where we're at.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love it. Well, Bill, we can chat forever. And I think our next event that we do in Nebraska, probably in the fall at some point, may have to have you come and teach us all how to swing some shit around and do so safely. So my wheels are spinning on what this next event could be, between having you there, being transported by land jet, who knows what it can turn into. But before we wrap up, one of the questions we ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them. And the reason why we do so is there's a lot of information out there. And for folks who are at the very beginning of their entrepreneurial journey, they may not know where to start or what resources are worth the time to dive into. So we asked about a book that's had an impact on him for that purpose, to distill that reading list. And the book that you chose to talk about briefly is Mastery by George Leonard. Tell me a little bit more about that and the impact that's had on you.
Okay. It's actually, so as far as like personal development or pursuing anything, it's one of my favorite. Obviously, this is what I suggest. It's my favorite book of all time. It's a book I keep around and I hand out to people because it goes through all the processes of learning how to master something. So George Leonard was he was a pilot and eventually became like taught other pilots, was a pilot instructor. And he was also an Aikido master. And he breaks down all the stages of first learning something. So like a lot of times people get in or the different styles of people getting into something is that they go full bore. They're going to master this in like, I'm going to master this project in 6 weeks or record time. Right. And then it kind of dies off. And a lot of what he's talking about is embracing the plateaus. You have to embrace these plateaus and ride them out. And you just keep rinsing, repeating. And then you make this jump. And then there's a new set of plateaus. And you keep rinsing, repeating. And then there's another jump. And that it's endless. And how he breaks this down is it's a super, super short read, but it's brilliant because you can apply it to your fitness and your health. And you can definitely apply it to your business and growing your company. Because like, if you think about like in growing your company, there's different skill sets. When you start a business, it's a whole different skill set than when you start to take a business regionally, right? And then when you start to take a business nationally, there's different problems, there's different structures and mindsets, but you have to embrace these plateaus and master kind of each level as you go through. The same as with fitness. You know, everybody starts off at a certain point and their understanding of fitness is one thing. And then that evolves and it changes as you get older because what you did in high school, if you're into fitness, isn't what you're going to be doing at 44, nor probably should it be what you're doing at 44. You know, there's different things to take care of and you have to have an honest look at that and give yourself the time to learn and embrace and set kind of those grooves so that you can actually move ahead, that foundation isn't, crap, basically. And so this George Leonard book it's fantastic.
I think it goes to show too about embracing the plateaus. Like there are probably a lot of instances in your fitness journey, particularly in competing in the various things that you competed in where, I mean, not to knock kettlebells, but like it can be kind of mindless for a little bit and just kind of embracing that and then picking your head up and you're like, damn, I'm a world champion. I have a record here. Whereas if you got bored and didn't embrace it, you would have never hit those things.
100%. You have to just continually everything's monotonous at a certain point, right? I don't care what you're doing.
Could always be improving, right?
Yeah. And so it's getting good at that really, really basic stuff and just sharpening that edge because it's that basic stuff that's going to take you to the top. And it's true of whatever endeavor you're in. And so I love that book. I think it's he nailed it when he wrote it.
Love it. Well, Bill, this has been a pleasure for everyone tuning in. This is certainly an episode worth sharing. If you'd be so kind as to click that share button, leave us a review if you haven't had an opportunity to. And before we sign off, Bill, if there's folks here that want to learn more, who want to work with you because they're local or maybe virtually, like where can these folks be sent to spend more time with you?
So kettlebellwarriorfitness.com. You can email me at bill at kettlebellwarriorfitness.com. And the easiest place to find me is just on Instagram at kettlebell warrior. Just shoot me a DM and I'll get back to you.
And the main takeaway here, folks, is that if you spend time with Bill, you're going to have better relationships, look better, and get laid more. So you're climbing that tower, baby.
You're my new
I
hype
love
guy.
it.
You're hired.
Yeah, all
You're hired,
day,
baby.
brother, all day.
Awesome. On that note, it's Friday afternoon. We're signing off at the time of this recording. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Bill, appreciate your time. And one last time, Terry, thanks for the intro.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, fellas. It's been great.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life. I'm about